us at him during a health class would have done nothing to change that particular incident. He needed SEL to be integrated as part of the everyday curriculum in every class so that he didn't sit alone and he didn't feel like no one cared whether he lived or died. One extra semester of health and talking about suicide prevention would have done nothing for him, and it would not have prevented him from attempting to hurt himself that way. SEL needs to be part of everything that the school does, not just thrown into one class for one semester. Thank you.
I know I spoke briefly before. If I could just take 10 seconds to pull together what I've heard tonight, and hopefully you've all heard, it sounds like instead of taking the easy way out, we should really dig deep and listen to what our community is telling us and not take the easy path. Sounds like outdated, offensive materials, repeating materials that the kids don't need ad nauseum for too long. It sounds like the whole health program needs to be overhauled. Rather than taking the time to try to pull together a program that nobody seems to be in favor of, maybe we can take that time to work on overhauling what we have and making it work for everyone. And I think the fact that, like someone pointed out, not one person tonight has stood up and spoken up in support of this proposal. I think that kind of says it all. So hopefully you guys will really dig deep and really, really listen to what people are saying and not just pay lip service, but really dig deep and try to do your jobs to help do what's in our kids' best interests. And we thank you very much. We know it's not an easy task. We know it's difficult, but we really appreciate your trying to work with us, so thanks.
Is there anyone else for public comment right now?
I'm Joanna Bartlett from 9 Coddington Court. Just a very quick comment, other than agreeing with everything that's been said. I came to all those strategic planning meetings that we had, and I thought they were great. I really enjoyed them. And SEL was a big part of that. And we, as a group across the community, so many ideas were put forward to address that. But we didn't talk about taking PE away, and we didn't talk about adding an extra health classes that would be graded. That's all I wanted to add.
Is there anyone else? Okay, at this point, I'll close public comment on agenda items. I think Mr. Markarian wanted to respond first.
Okay, so just a couple thank yous. First of all, for those of you that hung in there for the duration, appreciate your sticking it out and staying for the meeting. I wanted to thank the kids for their comments, the parents in particular. It was really great to hear what everybody had to say. I also really appreciated the honesty and the candid sharing of information. I know that some of you shared some personal things, so thank you for that. And also, you know, listen, if you're in this room, you know being a parent is difficult, and everybody up here knows that. Some of you shared some of the work that you do as a parent, the work that you do as a volunteer. So we all agree on the why, you know, why we're all here and why we all work hard for the kids, doing things for lots of other people's kids, including your own. So I thank you for that. I appreciate that. I did want to respond specifically to the comments about the dated assignment. I don't think Mr. Vopel's still here, but he shared a copy of the assignment, and I just wanted to apologize on behalf of everybody that's here. Nobody wants to see dated assignments that contained offensive language in reference to phrases that are no longer even used. So my apologies for that, and we will address that immediately. So I do apologize with regard to that specific issue. Having said all that, I know that our administrative team has the best interests of the students in mind, as I think we all do, and the challenge becomes the how to do things. And as our last speaker pointed out, we've had a lot of conversation about wanting to do more things to improve, to cover character education more thoroughly, to do a better job with things. And as an administrative team, we don't just sit around and listen to things and participate in things like strategic planning meetings and look at all the data that we receive and collect intentionally and just pretend like we didn't see it. Our job is to respond to that information and to try to do the best things that we can for the students. So when you ask, where is this coming from? Well, it comes from a group of professionals that aren't going to sit on their hands when they look at the reality of the situation. They're going to look to try to find solutions and to try to make things better. And we may disagree on the how to make things better, but that's where it comes from. It comes from a place of evaluating, collecting, analyzing, and thinking, hey, we're not just going to sit by and feel like something needs to be done but not do anything about it, any more than I would, receive a copy of a dated assignment that needs to be removed from the earth and do nothing about it. So, understand that that's where a lot of this comes from. When you ask, well, where's this come from? I mean, look at the data, look at what our administrative team is trying to put together. That's where it comes from. And, somebody else raised the issue of time. Well, that's exactly right? There's never enough time to do everything that we'd like to do. So if something becomes a priority, you have to try to find the time to do the work, and that's the struggle that we have. So that's kind of a general perspective to sort of give you a sense of where it's coming from, why it's coming, and my thoughts on the issue is that, we're looking to find the time to do a better job with things that we think are important, and obviously, the health curriculum, the wellness issues, it's the natural place to look. It's a place for intentional instruction to occur. I 100% agree that it needs to permeate everything that we do. The comments about the suicide prevention and education program, I really appreciated those because it's absolutely true. We know that we need to permeate the conversation throughout the entire experience that students have in terms of wellness and emotional care and suicide prevention. There's no such thing as, do this for a week and it's taken care of. And that's part of what's frightening when you even look at the health curriculum, where you have these giant gaps where no instruction's occurring at all. Never mind what you're trying to permeate through the whole building, just the opportunity to do something intentional and instructional for a period of time, to set the stage for what you want to try to permeate throughout the rest of the school day, to really be able to say, these are our priorities. In the area of health and wellness education, we want to set the stage for that in an intentional way that gives us a foundation for what we're trying to do in permeating the opportunities to discuss these things in all of our classes, not just at the high school, but throughout the experience that students have. What is their program? So that's really what it's about from my perspective in trying to lead an administrative team that I want to thank for working hard to put this information together. As I said, I can appreciate the differences and viewpoints that people have on the how, but I know the team worked really hard. Ms. Fox, Ms. Smith, Mr. Kraus, and Mr. Shello, I appreciate the work that they put into this and the fact that they're here tonight listening and really trying to do good work on behalf of our students and the community. So I'll be quiet now and just give them the opportunity. I told them that there would probably be a good bit of public comment tonight, and if you heard anything that you're able to or interested in responding to, I know it's late, but you've also waited and listened, so if there's any question you feel like you wanted to jump in and speak to, I'd give you the opportunity to do that. I know there was a lot said. A lot of it was commentary and not necessarily a ton of questions, but if you had anything you wanted to share, please feel free to do that. And if not, maybe other board members want to say anything, but we have an agenda that we also have to get to tonight, so. Sure, I think a lot, if you can't hear Ms. Fox, she's saying she knows there was a lot said and would like some opportunity to think about it and reflect on it, and I'm sure that I could say the same for myself, as well as probably the whole board and everybody in this room that's listened to all of it. But again, I'm very thankful and appreciative of what people had to say. I think there's a lot of valid points, and understand that I really believe that, you know, we're all coming from the right place, and there's a lot of agreement on, like I said, why we're here and why we're doing what we're doing. How to accomplish it is challenging because, as one speaker pointed out, there's a lot of competition for a very finite amount of time. Not only time within our school day, but time within a 24-hour period where, as you heard, people are trying to already fit 10 pounds of stuff into a 2-pound bag. So I'll be quiet.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of information to take in. You want to say something, Mike?
I would like to make a comment. I didn't hear too much discussion about what's causing the problem. And I'll back up a little bit. One of the charts or slides had 10% of where does learning come from? 10% from reading and 20% from hearing. But the big learning increases happen when we discuss things, 70%, 80% when we experience them, and when we try and talk about things and teach one another. Well, it's interesting. During the presentation, there was no discussion at all of that, I didn't think. If you go to the coffee shops and you see the kids at the tables, and they don't talk to anyone anymore. They're on the telephones and they're doing the emails and what have you, but the discussion is missing. And I think we need some more work on what's causing the problem before we try and fix it. And I think I would throw the telephone out as one of the major items that is causing trouble. And I didn't hear anybody mention discussion and telephones and things. I think there's some more work to be done. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
I mean, I think we all agree there's a lot of work to be done on this issue. And as Mr. Markarian said, I mean, that's what's behind this whole discussion in the first place. I just wanted to respond to a couple, like I guess, simple questions or comments. One person asked why we couldn't replace the personal finance half-a-year class with an SEL class. Personal finance is mandated by the state, so we can't just eliminate that. Not that personal finance isn't important, but even if we did choose to replace it, we can't do that. So that is something that's required. I think there were some questions about there were some questions that were related to scheduling. The master schedule at Ridge is so complicated, so I know kids have asked for one half of the year study hall and not gotten it because their elective wasn't available the other half and stuff. I know it doesn't always work out. I know sometimes it does, but that's definitely something to look at as we're looking at, you know, our new student information system and scheduling, if there's some way to maximize like requests that would help students out. I think all of the comments about the health curriculum, you know, needing to be revised or assessed, I think that was already the plan with looking at all the different courses for the program evaluation and the plan for the summer's curriculum rating. Clearly, as we see, there's some examples of why that might need to happen, but so that was already obviously in process. I think the board, you know, heard a lot of input tonight. And some creative ideas maybe about what we can do. So I think we're all going to take that information. I don't know if anyone else wants to say anything. No? Okay. So at this point, we're up to the next agenda item, which I think is the approval of minutes, right? Yeah, approval of minutes. We have one item. Would someone like to make a motion to move that? Mrs. White? Anyone else? Someone needs to second it. Please. Mrs. Korn. That's okay. Any questions or comments about the minutes? Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Byrne? Yes. Ms. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray? Yes. Mr. Salmon? Yes. Mrs. White?
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Korn?
Yes.
Mrs. McCune?
Yes.
Madam President?
Thank you. We're up to the Finance Committee. There's 27 items. Would someone like to make a motion to move them? Mrs. Gray and Mrs. Korn. Do you want to do your report and then we'll vote on them after?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So for the items on the agenda, let's see. 1 through 3 are standing items. Item 4 is professional development. 5 is a field trip. 6 and 7 are various IT items to dispose or sell IT assets. 8 is an authorized a Liberty Corner fundraiser to resurface the basketball court. Thank you to Liberty Corner PTO for doing that, because I think it already happened. Item 9 is to accept a donation of $7,000 from parents of exceptional children for purchase of laptops/iPads. Thank you to PEC for that. Item 10 is to accept a donation from WAMS PTO. Thank you to the WAMS PTO. Item 11 is to accept a donation from Ridge Marching Band for a shed. Thank you to Ridge Marching Band. Item 12 is to authorize disbursement of state funds to St. James. 13 is to approve a grant for the Mindful WAMS program. And 14 through 27 are approved services for students.
Okay, does anyone have any questions about those items? Should we do a roll call for those?
Mr. Byrne?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Salmon?
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Korn?
Yes.
Mrs. McCune?
Yes.
Madam President?
Thank you. Was there anything else from the report?
Yeah, a few items that were under on discussion. So Finance met Wednesday, January 23rd. The first item up was the minimum wage legislation that's come out from the state. Essentially, the minimum wage is going up from whatever it is currently up to $15 an hour as of January 1st, 2024 in staged increments over the course of each year. This will impact us at various times as we move forward. So it starts at $9 an hour and then moves up to $15 or $10 an hour and then moves up to $15 an hour. For food service and custodial, we'll see increases for food service in 2020 and custodial in 2021, but those will be nominal because we're already paying those folks over minimum wage. The Aramark contracts are expiring for those services in 2 years, so we'll need to put those out to bid and then possibly recalibrate food service charges when we get to 2023 and 2024 to compensate for the additional cost of labor. Cedar Hill in December had an event at the school, and it was after a few days of mud, so Mr. Ciampola came in, and I guess some cars parked on the grass and chewed up the grass, and then a few cars drove out through a neighbor's yard, so there was some damage there. So Mr. Ciampola is sending out a letter to parents informing them not to park on the grass unless he opens it up for an event based on his discretion. We will be installing bollards and chains to regulate future access to the field. Let's see, CUSAC came and on January 15th, 2019, and finished the facilities visit, so no substantive issues were identified there. Mr. McLaughlin at the end presented a preview of funds that could be available for expenditures for the next school year, basically to talk about the allocation of state aid and extraordinary aid and how that impacts with the growing cost of educating and transporting students, in particular classified students. That's kind of the high level.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Salmon? No? Okay, thank you. We're up to personnel. There's 25 items. Would someone like to make a motion? Mrs. Gray, Mrs. Korn. I think those ones are fairly self-explanatory. I can give the report after we vote, I guess, Does anyone have any questions on the items before we vote? No? Okay. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Byrne? Ms. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Salmon?
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Korn?
Yes.
Mrs. McCune?
Yes.
Madam President?
Thank you. The Personnel Committee met on January 18th. We spent a fair amount of our meeting going over information for the BTEA negotiations. We reviewed the proposal that we're going to be presenting to the BTEA when we have our meeting on February 4th. We discussed some specific personnel issues, and we also discussed the fact that we're going to be interviewing for a math supervisor as Mrs. Bowman is leaving, which is very sad. So that interview committee will be meeting in February, and the intent is to try to appoint someone so there'll be some overlap between that person and Ms. Bowen before she leaves at the end of the year. I think that was about it that I can report on. Does anyone have any questions? No? Okay. Now we're up to, what's next? Sorry. Policy.
Okay, we have one item on the agenda. You want me to
Oh, yeah,
talk
we
about
need a
this so we
motion
can
for
vote
the
on it
item.
now?
Okay, someone
do
want to
that?
make a motion?
Do I need to,
Okay, Mr. Salmon.
well, do you want me to explain it first?
Yeah.
Is there a second?
Sure, well, we can make the motion first.
Okay.
Yeah. And Ms. Schaefer did second.
So
Okay, and then
it's
you can
not-
discuss it.
It's just a first reading for, it has to do with the revised 2019-2020 school calendar. And it's a real simple change. It was, we changed the Monday, December 23rd from a half day to a day off because it didn't really make much sense to come in for a half day because then we have off anyway the rest of the week. And it doesn't, it will only it'll reduce our possible snow days from 5 to 4. And then, but everything else stays the same in the calendar. It just seemed like the best way to deal with that weird half day. So that's that for that one. Would you vote? You want me to read it?
We can vote, and then you can do your report. Anyone have questions about that before we vote?
Questions?
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Byrne? Yes. Ms. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Salmon?
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Korn?
Yes.
Mrs. McCune?
Yes,
Madam President?
thank you.
All right.
Do your
So the policy committee, we met on January 14th, Monday. I don't know, last 2 Mondays ago, was it? And Ms. Fox joined us for one of our discussions regarding the grading policy. Regarding the regulation for the grading policy, hold on, where are those glasses I have? I can't find them. Oh, so I can't remember that. So it's the regulation as it applies to returning tests to students. It's regulation 2624, the grading system, and right now it's just 2 parts of it, 8 and 9. It says that test assessments are returned to students with descriptive and prescriptive feedback that motivates further progress. And 9 is assessments are returned to and shared with students in a timely fashion. Some documents district created may be filed in the student's portfolio. That's what it says now, but when we were discussing test circulation, so historically all tests are returned to students, but the practice has proved to be inconsistent. So, because not everyone is following the policy in the same way, so some tests are not being revised or not all tests are being returned. In the past, it was emphasized that all tests should be returned because it would be unfair to the children who did not receive their test back to use as a study guide or et cetera. But there's ongoing frustration at the teacher level when the policy is inconsistent, so because it can create a hardship on the teachers, especially those who have to rewrite high-stakes tests on a regular basis, which is difficult and time-consuming process. So there needs to be a balance between the black and white of the policy and the need to keep high-stakes tests and assessments relevant. Like in today's world, we're talking about the changing technology, the cheating temptations. It's important to revise a policy in order to reduce the inconsistencies and help keep the tests relevant. So high-stakes summative assessments need to be kept. This keeps the assessments relevant. The assessments can be thoroughly reviewed in class and then collected. And if a parent or a child needs to see the test, they can come in and see the assessment in a controlled environment. That's what we were talking about. This is all discussion. And the formative tests can be returned. So like, are we working on the policy? It was going to happen after more teacher feedback. They want to get more teacher feedback, has been received, and hopefully the revision will be ready for the 1920 school year. But this is just a discussion. We also talked about there's a couple new laws, and we haven't received the policy yet. There is the transgender policy, and then the administration of medication, the Narcan policy. But since the legislature had passed laws regarding, but they're still waiting for Strauss SMA, right? So they're still waiting for the guidelines from the Department of Education and the Commissioner of Education in order to finalize the policies. It's expected that the new policy will be ready, which I think they are, and it's about that thick. So we're going to have fun with that next time. So that's just a couple of policies that we're just waiting for the actual written part. And we also talked with the school calendar. So as we did with the 2018-19 calendars, we need to add language to the 1920 and 2021 calendars regarding the fact that extra snow days will be coming out, won't be coming out of spring break. We just had to add that in. We don't have to vote on that. And the last thing was the graduation requirement. I put a link in. The DJ, New Jersey Department of Education had filed a motion for partial reconsideration in the decision that held the current regulations regarding statewide assessments, contrary to the intent of the statute. The department is seeking relief for all students in the class of 2019 or 20 who met with the applicable graduation assessment requirements in place as of December 30th, 2018. It doesn't affect the administration of any state assessments or anything at this time, but now I know that there's a, I called the governor's office today. They're voting on another, Teresa Ruiz has so there's a lot of crap going on with that, but nothing that I have to report on right now. And that was it. If anyone has any questions about anything?
I just have one comment. I think the test should be returned to students. I think the test should be returned to students. And I think the teachers that don't want to develop new tests every year, they're lazy. So
That's not true. That's not.
My opinion is,
It has nothing to do with laziness.
well, I was a teacher myself for a while, and it would be great if I didn't have to come up with new tests.
Yeah, but you didn't have kids taking pictures of your tests.
Well-
And you'd have to come up with a new test for each class.
Well,
For each-
absolutely.
For each class, for
Well,
each,
then maybe you have to do that.
whoa, drop the mic, Mike.
So that's my opinion.
Okay.
Is he okay back there?
Any other comments or questions for the policy report?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Any other questions or comments about policy? No. Okay, so we're moving on to curriculum. I'm going to give the curriculum report because Linda is under the weather and could not be here tonight. She has one of those nasty bugs that's going around, I guess. She was going to the doctor today, so hopefully she'll be feeling better. Okay, so the curriculum committee met on January 4th. The first thing, actually, that we talked about was several teachers came from the math department to talk about some issues with cheating at the high school, and they did express the frustration about having to make up multiple versions of tests, even within the same school day, because there's obviously kids taking advantage of technology like Google Docs and things like that. So they talked about the logistics of that first, but I think what was more of the focus of the conversation was they were talking about they basically wrote a letter, and all of them read the same letter to their students, and so they're trying to have more discussions in class about cheating and all this pressure about grades as opposed to focusing on learning, and so they're trying to have a lot of dialogue. So what they came to talk about was a lot of these conversations they're having with their students. They did express concern for the students who hadn't been cheating because they did change their testing protocols around some because they discovered there was some widespread issues going on. So, the concern was, well, that's not fair to the students who weren't doing it. So they are talking about that with the students and aware of that. And trying to make things as fair as possible for everybody. Let's see. We talked about CUSAC. We had an update on a couple of items that the state wants districts to have in their curriculum that are different than last time around. One of them is the requirements for elementary world language. is a little bit different and requires a certified teacher. And there's also a requirement for middle school dance and theater, which requires a certified teacher. So, Ms. Fox and the curriculum people are trying to work out a plan for this. We don't have all the details or know the exact timetable or scheduling of this yet, but those are two things that are on the radar for upcoming meetings. Obviously, all of these things are pending budget approval because we have to find out, you know what I mean? When we're going through a budgeting process, what's doable when. We had an update about Genesis. There was an implementation meeting. Genesis is a new student information system that's going to be replacing Aspen. So we got an update about the first meeting for that. The goal is to phase Genesis in and use it for next fall, to have it up and running for next fall, but use it during the scheduling process going forward. We also went over the program of studies changes, which had been presented at our last Board of Ed meeting. So we already got that presented to us. One clarification is with the engineering and technology classes. I just wanted to reiterate that we are trying to expand the definitions and descriptions of these courses in the program of studies to make sure that kids understand what these courses are like, whether it's more hands-on or more theoretical or mathematical. And so we're offering the Project Lead the Way courses that are currently in existence, as well as the CAD class that used to be in existence in the program of studies this year, and we'll see who signs up for what and what they're interested in. They'll have a good description of what the courses are, so they'll know, and then we'll see, what the interest level is and what we can do. Let's see. The rest of it, what was all gone over last time. We got an update about the schedule for visiting schools for the rotating drop schedule and block scheduling, which you heard about from Maddie, that they started the visits. So there's 4 schools planned, and they obviously did the first one today, and there's another one tomorrow. So we'll get reports on that. And then we had a report on 5th grade platooning about how it was going. The teachers from all of the elementary schools had a full-day planning meeting on December 13th, and they each presented an overview of the model they're using and how it's going. And the goal is to develop a model that's more common among the 4 schools for next year. So they're working on that, and they're going to talk about it more at subsequent meetings, and we'll get another report about that. And then we talked about chamber orchestra, which we also discussed at the last Board of Ed meeting since then, and a letter has gone out to the parents of the elementary students that would be invited to be potential members of the chamber orchestra that's going to start meeting before school. And that was it. Does anyone have any questions? Mr. Byrne.
I took freshman physics book when I was in school and copied a couple pages of questions, and I left a copy of this at each one's position. My argument is to pretend that, or to try and encourage kids to take engineering, they created this fake course, this is my opinion, this fake course about building models, and this is engineering, and if you want to take it, then you better be able to do problem solving. And so it's science and it's technology. It's not model building at all, and I gave you a copy of this just so you can see, too, that this is not what they're teaching. What they're teaching has nothing to do with engineering. And then the second item, if anybody wanted copies of these, any students or parents, particularly the ones that are complaining about, gee, the model making is gone, I'll be happy to at the board office, and anybody can pick up a copy.
Well, I think we should photocopy it and give it to the physics club, the kids that are in physics club, and see how they do. Yeah, you want to pass this on to Mike Gilmore or something, make him give it to the kids. Yeah, see if they can do it.
Could I do these problems
'Cause
anymore?
I'm not doing them.
No.
They need the answer.
No, I do not.
Yeah. Okay, well, we'll pass this along, Mike, to the kids and see if the physics
gonna
kids
grade
can
it
do it.
then? They're not going to know.
Well, let the instructors try and do them.
Okay, so we're up to advocacy committee.
Advocacy met on January 7th. Before the meeting with the PTO presidents, we met with the Cedar Hill Elementary School Student Council. And presented us with an amazing PowerPoint, and they were so articulate and impressive for third, fourth, and fifth graders to be doing this. Was really nice. They had a lot to say. They were not shy. It was great. So the presentation is linked to the minutes for everyone to look at later. We talked about the reorg. Jen White is going to be the new chair of advocacy, and I will no longer be on it, which is shocking. It's been on forever. Mr. Markarian gave a brief park update. It was voted on December 31st, 2018, that passing the park cannot be held as a graduation requirement. The state had 30 days to refute it, or what's the word? Appeal, thank you. Appeal it, and I think they actually are in the process of appealing it. So we have to stay tuned. We have no idea what the outcome's going to be. And also, we briefly talked about, under a new bill that went into law on January 3rd, that New Jersey public schools have to infuse elements of financial literacy into the middle school program. So ironically, we're talking about high school financial literacy, and we have to talk about it in middle school now. So more to come on that, probably through the curriculum committee. Ms. Fox talked about, talked about her and Mrs. Smith doing the post-secondary report, which happened on the January 7th Board of Ed meeting. For anyone who wants to see that presentation, you can go on to our website and see that. She had a meeting scheduled with all the PTO presidents from the 4 elementary schools to talk about a 4th grade field trip at Ross Farm. I don't know if that happened yet. It's more to come on that. Academic planning night was held January 17th. That was already passed. There was a question about whether there's consideration being given to bring back midterms and finals with the idea of helping prepare college students for big assessments, and the answer was not at this time. And there was also a question about grammar and if it's being taught, and the answer is yes, it's being taught in a variety of ways, K through 12, and all throughout the whole, English, language arts curriculum. And the schedule of PTO meetings for the rest of the year was attached, and that's all I got. Any questions?
Okay, thank you. SEL committee?
I'm sorry, I do have a report, and it's old. So the SEL committee met on December 20th of 2018. Seems like a really long time ago now, and I'll just stick to the highlights. 2 guidance counselors, or student assistance counselors from BOE Meeting came to share with the committee an overview of the new peer educators program that they've implemented at BOE Meeting. Last June, all 7th and 8th grade students were emailed through Aspen and were invited to apply or interview for participation in this new program. The mission is to have students within WAMS help shape the social emotional environment through their own positive actions within the building. Of the 27 students that responded, 17 became peer leaders. They meet twice a month, and they focus their efforts on 3 areas: kindness, drug and alcohol prevention, and wellness. The kindness unit was the first 1/3 of the year. The drug and alcohol prevention unit is what's happening currently, and then wellness will finish out the year. It's going very well. It's been very well received by the student body as well as by the participants, and they're working with the Municipal Alliance. They attend Municipal Alliance meetings as a group and work closely with Caitlin Cartoccio. The program is currently funded by a grant from the Somerset County Municipal Youth Services Commission, and they hope that they can continue to receive that grant and perhaps expand the program over the next few years. And there is some hope of some way to link it to the peer leaders program that exists at Ridge High School. And the second item was about academic integrity. the committee received an update about recent academic integrity violations, which Mrs. McCune kind of alluded to in the curriculum report. So Ms. Fox shared with the committee the framework for a parent academy, which you saw in the presentation earlier this evening. Mr. Shello made reference to. There are currently 3 scheduled academy sessions: Challenge Success, which is about the youth stress, which is the healthy stress, and then there'll be Effective Study Skills and Debunking the College Myth. By the way, that February 27th is the date for the first one. There was also some conversation about the best way to reach the target audience. It was proposed that a multi-prong approach be taken, including for the overall Parent Academy, not for these sessions, including in-person sessions such as the ones previously mentioned, possibly streaming them after the fact to make them available to those who couldn't attend. And then we received an update on the rotating drop schedule, which you've heard various parts of, so that's old news. And then Mr. Kraus gave an update to the committee about the beautification plans for Ridge High School, which are ongoing. With staff wellness in mind, Mr. Kraus has turned his attention to the need the staff has for a centrally located lounge space. They currently do not have that. The PTO has offered to assist in any way that they might be able to. He is working through several possibilities and hopes to have good news soon. In the same vein, the R&R or chill space that's been talked about for student is also under consideration, and they're working through various options, which of course is space-driven. And the last item was the Healthy Stress campaign, which is underway and began with the December 2018 Counseling Department newsletter, Counseling Corner. There were various articles and links to all kinds of information regarding healthy stress and how that can be good for our students. The next meeting passed, so.
Does anyone have any questions?
Well, yeah, and Karen Richmond is now the chair of that committee, and you'll hear from her next time.
Okay, thank you. So we're up to liaison committee reports. Please tell me nobody has one. That's good. Okay, we're up to public comment on non-agenda items. If there's anyone that has a public comment, now is the time. No? Okay, so we'll close public comment. We're up to board forum.
I have something to say, I'm sorry. Go ahead, go.
No, you go first.
No, you
Okay.
go first.
No, you go first.
One of you, yeah,
Somebody go.
Well, I want to say that it was great to have everyone come out tonight, even though I don't agree with everything everyone was saying. I also have 4 children in the school system, or one's out, and then I have a senior, I have a freshman, I have a 6th grader. So I'm not imposing any, we're not like, there's nothing happening here that's not happening to us as well. And hearing everyone speak, the one, I didn't realize option 2 was such a miracle worker, honestly. It wasn't a miracle worker for my kids, okay? So my son had like 3 study halls and did no homework. So, and still does no homework with study halls. So I understand maybe it's different for some people, I'm just saying, Also that there's a lot of like, I can't imagine that 40 minutes or 35 minutes a day would even make a dent in some of these kids' schedules. So it blows my mind. It makes me even think we need SEL more because they're so, it's incredibly overscheduled, kids, incredibly. So, it was very combative to me. We were told to do our jobs. I feel like we are trying to do our jobs. I sat here and listened to kids get up and talk about their friends who are wanting to kill themselves at these meetings that not everyone was at. We were at the strategic planning meetings, and people were saying we need more SEL. And then you try to do something good, and then everyone yells at you because it's not what they wanted. But you know what? Everyone has to sacrifice a little bit to get something that's good for everybody. Again, I'll say that again, because there's choices, and people don't want to make choices. And choices are part of learning how to grow up and do things that you don't like to do too. So sometimes if you're finding yourself up till 3 o'clock in the morning doing homework, there's a choice to be made there. Or last time I checked, everyone knows that like, my kids are in sports too, all year round, track, all year round. No, we can't do everything that we want to do. And it stinks. And I was mad the other day because I want to go skiing, and I can't, and it's a bummer. But, you know, it's a choice. It's a choice that we make. And since I was a kid, you had practice after school. I mean, I don't know. It's not a new thing. It's been around. It's the way it is. So getting attacked, I mean, these guys did a great presentation. I think it gave the impression you're going to rework it's going to be, we're hoping, you're reworking it, you're working on it this summer. So it's going to be like something that will benefit almost all kids. It'll be great. I hope, that's my hope, and that's what, from what I've seen, I believe in the passion. I believe that will be the case, but I don't know. It just seemed to me that they're asking a lot of option two. It's like, it's not the cure-all for everything. And I don't know, it just, we're trying our best with the small amount of time we have. And if this is what the professionals at school think that this is what the kids need, I feel like giving it a chance and listening and seeing how it works is something too, that we should focus on too. And that I was a little, and the fact that people were emailing us, calling us liars, and it just, you know, it got under my skin, and telling me it's too late. I mean, I don't know. It just was a little bit, I don't know. Give it a chance. Maybe it'll be something great for the kids in the end.
I also have a feeling that while in the presentation you were showing what is currently happening versus what could be, it's not written in stone that it's going to be exactly that way. That was a sample to give to me an understanding of what we're missing, what we could be doing with that extra time. It's not written in stone, and that this summer, that's what you'll be really attacking. That was my impression of it. The other thing is, I think it's so telling, you know, here we've just approved under, I guess, finance for the forensics team. I'm counting 9 weeks worth of competitions, weekends. So these kids, they have practice, rehearsal, whatever you want to call it, every day after school. They give of their weekends. Drama club's the same, a cappella's the same. There are lots of kids that are here all hours of the day, all hours of the night. Theater, if you're in the orchestra, or option 2 is not an option to any of those kids. So what do they have to do? They have to figure it out. So when someone said, you know, everybody here, there's one common thread of everybody here. Your children are athletes. But there are many, many children in district who this does not apply to.
Okay, Mike, you can't see him over there.
They did not go through each slide, and they went through very quickly, so that we didn't see all of the analysis and discussion. But my concern is, I didn't hear any explanation of what's causing the problem. I think it's lack of discussion, lack of interaction with the children among themselves and what have you. But back to the point, I wasn't, you know, overwhelmed with the findings and the recommendation, and I was very impressed with the audience. I think they had great arguments, and I don't think we're ready to do this project. I think it needs a lot more work. I don't think the effort was put into what's causing the problem, how do we fix it? And Ridgewood just is a great example. They have the problem. You know, the problem's getting worse here. What are we going to do about it? And they didn't explain, they did not explain to me what the problem is, and they didn't explain to me how they're going to fix it. All they're talking about is having a couple courses on, you know, sexual activity, and what are we talking about? That's not why the kids are committing suicide. Well, very poor presentation, in my opinion.
Oh my gosh, well,
Because of the explanations, And I think the audience hit it right. They're not ready to implement it.
I think I heard a lot of additional things that we need to keep working on with SEL. And I know I'm new because I haven't been in the background. I mean, one of the things I really think we should have some discussions about is dealing with the athletics piece of this, the after-school curriculum, all of those things that are taking up these massive amounts of time. I don't know. I mean, can we look at those? I just kept listening to people talking about all of the things that are stressing their kids out and thinking this is why we're trying to do this, but we need to address some of those bigger issues, just, continue to. I know SEL's trying, and that's, but the sports thing, I don't know.
I totally agree.
I also just think,
And I have an athlete.
agree or disagree with what was presented. I just want to go on the record as saying, I don't think it's fair to say it wasn't a good presentation. I think that a lot of effort went into place by a lot of people very quickly to be able to present to us. And I think it's not fair to say that it was not a good presentation. You can have questions about it, and that's valid, but I don't think to say just it wasn't a good, I don't think that's fair to say.
I'm not going to retract what I said.
And I'm not going to retract what I said.
Good, and discussion is wonderful.
So I want to comment on a couple of the prior comments, and I'm just going to start with the last one. We heard a lot of interesting and passionate commentary tonight, and I think that was wonderful, but I think having lived in this town as long as I have and attended as many board meetings from both there and here as I have, I'm so disappointed in the fact that just in the presentation alone, we can see that we've touched on this topic on repeated dates over a period of more than approaching 2 years. And it took one little sheet of paper that the director of counseling happened to provide at a different meeting as part of a larger, more comprehensive update of what was changing in the program of studies for people to pay attention. If you want to be part of the process, show up, attend a meeting or 2 or 3, watch the video recordings if you can't come to the meetings, and find out what's reported, what's presented. We have terrific presentations probably every other meeting. There's no reason that people couldn't have been informed before the night that quick sheet went out for the counseling department, and that's what triggered this. And I think that's just really disappointing, because if it's important enough to be here for 3 hours tonight, as many members of our community were, it's important enough to find out in advance of the last meeting from a sheet of paper that got shared on Facebook. So, okay, I'm done with that. And now I want to piggyback on what Suzanne just said. I do have concerns about the athletics piece of this, and all of my students, all 4 of them were athletes, and some there was no option 2 for them. That just wasn't a thing back then. And then my second 2, they did avail themselves of option 2, and I can see and understand some of the concerns, but I think some of it comes from the issue of what are we asking out of some of these extracurriculars? What is reasonable? How high a price do we want to pay to be the best? And what is the best? Who decides what the best is? Because you can be the part of a team, like my kids have been, that goes just slightly over 500. But you know what? The practices were at crazy times, like 6 in the morning when they need to have their sleep. And the reality is, I was a 3-season athlete in high school, and I lived in a very large district that had 2,300 students just in one of our 2 high schools. We had late buses at 4 o'clock, 5:30, and 6:30, and by God, the coaches got you on the bus because nobody's mother was coming to the school to pick you up and wait half an hour while a coach decided they were going to shoo kids out, or just keep them late because they didn't like the way they ran the last laps. So we have to find meeting in the middle compromise on some of this stuff, and I think we lost that somewhere long before I showed up at Ridge High School. So I'm done with that. And my last thing is what Jen referred to about this, the be-all and end-all, that it seems that option 2 study hall has become for families and kids. And I want to ask the question, why? How do we get to this place? They're overloaded. We all know that. And a couple of us had a conversation a few days ago about chemistry, which seems to rear its ugly head here, there, and everywhere. And tonight it was mentioned not just in terms of honors, which, you know, is not that it's new, but it's a different comment. And we need more time. Mr. Markarian referred to the difficulty with time. We're exploring another schedule option. What kind of time will that provide for us, and what could that do for us? I don't really know, and I don't even know if it's feasible given our facilities. But I hope that as we internalize all these comments from today, we think about maybe it's terrifying that option 2 study hall for 9 weeks, because we're only talking about 9 weeks of it, it's not going away completely, is that much of a be-all and end-all for students. I think we have a bigger problem.
So I thought the team time presentation was phenomenal. And I'm bummed that I'm not on advocacy anymore because I'm going to miss out on those meeting with the student council kids, because that was a really great way to start the evening. In terms of the curriculum, I think that Nick addressed that issue, and hopefully that is something that will obviously be dealt with by Ms. Clark, who I think presented, right, Ms. Clark? Which she seemed super engaged, and that's the teacher I think you want teaching these topics. So I appreciate that part of the presentation and all the work that went into it. I was just kind of writing down quotes from some of the parents that were presenting, and the first part of it was a few of these. Where is this additional health class coming from? Who is pushing this decision? The curriculum, Board of Ed, Phys Ed? We, the board, haven't been listening to what the community is saying. So during the fall, we had board meetings every Monday night because we did the strategic planning. So we were in the Ridge High School cafeteria for 6+ hours in aggregate time. And we, as far as I was concerned, all we talked about was SEL. That's all, it was on number one on every list, every breakout session was SEL, SEL, SEL. So I don't think this is new, to Karen's point. Like, this has been talked about forever. And at the meetings, I never heard anybody talk about option 2 as kind of like what you were saying is like the linchpin that's holding the districts. Yeah, I mean, I was kind of shocked that this happened because I knew what option 2 was, I understood it, but I didn't know how absolutely critical it was, because for all the talk of SEL that came up in the community planning, the strategic planning meetings, nobody mentioned it. So I was shocked to hear that. I mean, it's good, I think, that we got the feedback to hear this, but I guess to Karen's point, it was interesting to hear how critical it is. So then some of the other quotes about parents that were speaking, describing what option 2 means to them and their kids. We're just trying to survive. My student needs talking to her student at night, I need help, but I have too much stress, and the only free time I have to talk about it is after 1 a.m. This change in the curriculum will break the backs of middle-level students. We can't get enough family time. There's too much stress. There's not enough time. Again, to Karen's point, if option 2 is the thing that is, that 9 weeks of 40 minutes is something that is so critical, it's a little mind-boggling that that's what's going on. And then reading back to some of these emails and then hearing some of the students describe their days, I mean, I would assume that in the description of the day, some of the emails that came in, we need option 2 because my child has dance practice for 7 hours a day, every day after school, because we're in this competitive league and they're taking honors chemistry and things, and this option 2 is the thing that's really necessary in our lives. I'm surprised we haven't gone kind of the other way with, no, we need options 3, 4, 5, and 6, and to cut the school day down to like 2 hours because there's just too much other stuff. So I appreciate the kids coming up, and I appreciate the parents relaying what their students' schedules look like. But I mean, again, I was just completely shocked because I didn't hear anything about this at any of the strategic planning when SEL was the topic of this conversation for 6+ hours. So thank Ms. Fox and Ms. Clark and Mr. Shello for putting this together. I think we do need to incorporate some of the feedback, and maybe looking at the topics is a different way to do this and different implementation, but I think what came across in strategic planning are that these topics are critical to this community, right? They're being dealt with every day, and the kids need to be aware. It's awareness stuff. It's not really instructional, it's awareness. I mean, they don't need to be tested on, what an opioid is, but they need to know, like, what the signs are to help themselves and their friends. So I'm glad we got the feedback. I was just, like I said, it was surprising.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised by the reaction to it in the same sense that you guys just said, that, like, I knew that kids would not be, they would not be happy losing their marking period of option 2, certainly, and my own kids, feel the same way. I guess, I've had kids go through the school who didn't, before there was option 2, and they took 2 musics and they didn't have a lunch or a study hall ever, and I've had kids who did take advantage of it, and in some cases it was very helpful, for them, depending on the season and what was going on with them, but I never viewed it as like, it's a short enough period of time, I guess, in the day that I didn't view it as like a make or break kind of thing. It was a nice thing to have for that marking period. I totally sympathize that not every kid who really feels that they need it needs it because they've completely overloaded on AP classes or they're doing insane amounts of extracurriculars. So I definitely sympathize, with the kids, of all of them, for whatever reason, that they need that study hall. But it is a sign that first of all, our schedule at the high school, I mean, some kids are scheduled with kind of crazy schedules, and I've experienced that firsthand this year with my daughter, where, maybe we just need to rethink some of these combinations of classes that kids have been able to do, and especially with them running around, with like little weird study halls here or there, but, with that in some cases. But, yeah, I think it was upsetting to read how upset everyone was, because it just showed, like the quotes that you gave, that clearly the problem with stress and angst and stuff is, probably even worse than what we were thinking in terms of just in families too, not just the kids, so it is upsetting.
I just want to say one more thing. I'm going to apologize to Ridgewood because, I mean, I feel really bad that someone Googled Ridgewood and then started really talking smack about them, and that wasn't really our intention at all, because I don't think Ridgewood's SEL program is so crappy that their kids are going out like, doing crime and doing drugs, and like I really was taken aback by that, and I would hate someone to just start Googling Ridge and talking about how crappy our kids are and how they get in car
Well, I think
accidents
Ridgewood, like I know people that before even, like they were kind of on the cutting edge of some of this discussion. Remember, they were like the district that had a homework-free night once a month, and it was like this big deal. There was one night a month where people didn't have homework, or maybe even extracurriculars, one night a month, and the town was like, this makes all the difference in the whole world, and that just makes you feel sad that it was that bad, that having one night a month, made that big of a difference.
So I just wanted to throw it out there that we weren't bashing
No.
Ridgewood.
Can I just make one quick comment? I just want to say thank you. I know it's just Kristen, but I just want to say thank you. I didn't say that before, but I know how hard everyone worked on this, and I don't think it's fair to cut it down. I think that we would have heard all that commentary sooner if our community were engaged at the beginning, when everyone was sitting there in the strategic planning hearing all these comments. We had already been listening to this message come through since the inception of Parents for Change and before. So if we had the feedback that we had tonight over time and in a productive dialogue like some of the speakers had suggested that worked together and all that, we might be in a different place in January of 2019 than we happen to be tonight. So thank you, Kristen, and everyone else who worked so hard on this. I think it was great.
Can I just say one last thing also, and I've said it to a number of you, like, we read all the emails, and we heard everything, and we listen, but there is a difference between listening and agreeing or disagreeing. So it doesn't mean we're not listening if we don't do something the exact way that it may be desired. That's not a sign that we don't listen. It's just a sign that we're listening and we either are agreeing or disagreeing or working on something, but we're all sitting here listening to everything.
Yeah, and that's why we try to propose ideas to react to that. I mean, the strategic planning, SEL, so here's an SEL, topic. I guess might not hit the mark there.
Well, and just to go back to Mr. Burns' comment about where some of this came from, I think this was a lot of tonight was a result of the counseling. I forget what that stressor, like whatever student stressor survey and that presentation, which was really startling on the mental health and stress, the stress and anxiety our students are facing on a daily basis and how often they're going to seek counseling. So I would say that had a lot of information on it, and maybe we should all be reviewing that again.
The children are not getting married. No, wait a minute. Wait a minute. The children are not getting married, they're not having children. The world is very, very different. And some of it is the social pressure they're under, but it's a very different world than 25 years ago, even 10 years ago. Even 5 years ago.
I recommend our Parent Academy, though, especially for the juniors, for debunking the college myth planning for next year, or for
Yeah.
the sophomores, because, they're talking about how stressful junior year is, and maybe this would be something that would be very helpful to parents and kids. I mean, the whole Parent Academy thing, we should really be selling this hard, because I think it's great for parents and to bring their kids and learn about all this stuff together.
Yeah, oh, wow. So does anyone else have anything, or can we make a motion for adjournment? Karen? Second, Tim? Okay. It's because I made it better this morning. She's like, I'm getting to be there till 10:30. I'm like, no, I've got to be later. Yeah, but I didn't want it to be